It is true that Christianity has adopted many of the best values of humanity, but they don't belong to Christianity or indeed to any other religion. I think it would be very sad if it were true that you really did need religion in order to be good. Because if you think about it, what that would mean would be either that you get your morals and your values from the Bible or the Quran or some other holy book, or that you are good only because you're frightened of God, because you don't want to go to hell or you do want to go to heaven.
Okay guys, once again, it's another round table with Richard Dawkins. This particular one is a kind of questions and answer. I must tell you, it's a video that is fully packed. On today, Richard Dawkins is analyzing and talking on morality without religion, purpose, and why he rejects Christianity. You don't know. To him, these are part of seeing Richard Dawkins' major best viewpoints so far in Christianity. Also, do not forget that you have one task to do for me, only to share, subscribe. Thank you, wonderful fans, wonderful viewers. Let's go there.
I very sincerely hope nobody does get their morals from the Bible. It's true that you can find the occasional good verse, and the Sermon on the Mount would be one example, but it's lost amid the awful things that are dotted throughout the Old Testament, and actually throughout the New Testament as well, because the idea, the fundamental idea of New Testament Christianity, which is that Jesus is the Son of God who is redeeming humanity from original sin, the idea that we are born in sin, and the only way we can be redeemed from sin is through the death of Jesus. I mean, that's a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea that God, this paragon of wisdom and knowledge, power, couldn't think of a better way to forgive us our sins than to come down to earth in his alter ego as his son and have himself hideously tortured and executed so that he could forgive himself.
Here we have this phenomenally sophisticated information processor, which is the cell. Am I really to believe that that information processing capacity simply came about by the laws of nature and random processes without a mind?
Yes.
Well, absolutely. I find that impossible to believe as a mathematician.
I know you do. This is called the argument from personal incredulity. I, as an atheist, my friends as atheists, lead thoroughly worthwhile lives, in our opinion, because we stand up, look the world in the face up to the fact that we are not going to last forever. We have to make the most of the short time that we have on this planet. We have to make this planet as good as we possibly can and try to leave it a better place than we found it.
Now, to some degree, you've already answered this, but there's a follow-up question. I'm going to go to that now. It's from Rebecca Ray.
Okay, my question for you today is, without religion, where is the basis of our values? And in time, will we perhaps revert back to Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest?
Before we continue right away, I want to make this point and bring it clearer to the viewers. Yes, Richard Dawkins has been able to make his own perspective view. But you and I know you can find good people outside the religion. Yes, good people, you can find them outside the religion or outside Christianity. You can also find bad people inside the religion. It's versa. It goes hand with. But the deeper question, can't atheists be normal, moral? They can. The deeper question is, what is the morality grounded in? Where is it grounded in? Is it just preference and culture? Or is there a real standard? Because whatever you are doing, you should be based on your standard. Many non-religious people live unethical, compassionate lives. Moral is institutions like fairness, empathy, and harm avoidance exists across cultures. The question is not whether the atheistics can be good, but whether moral claims are ultimately objective or subjective. Do you think morality is discovered or invented? That is my comment. That is my reaction. Let's also continue. Feel free to tell me how you feel at the comment section too. Do not forget to share this particular post. Let's get more opinion, more suggestions at the comment sections. Let's continue.
We perhaps revert back to Darwin's idea of survival of the fittest.
Richard Dawkins, you can answer that and I'll bring in Cardinal Pell.
I very much hope that we don't revert to the idea of survival of the fittest in planning our politics and our values and our way of life. I've often said that I'm a passionate Darwinian when it comes to explaining why we exist. It's undoubtedly the reason why we're here and why all living things are here. But to live our lives in a Darwinian way, to make a society a Darwinian society, that would be a very unpleasant sort of society in which to live. It would be a sort of Thatcherite society. And we want to, in a way, I feel that one of the reasons for learning about Darwinian evolution is as an object lesson in how not to set up our values and our social lives. Now, in the case of the cosmos, freak accident or design, the point that I've made over and over again is that even if we don't understand how it came about, it's not helpful to postulate a creator, because the creator is the very kind of thing that needs an explanation. And although it's difficult enough to explain how a very simple origin of the universe came into being, how matter and energy, how one or two physical constants came into existence, although it's difficult enough to think how simplicity came into existence, it's a hell of a lot harder to think how something as complicated as a god comes into existence, difficult enough to think of how a deist God comes into existence, and even more difficult to think of how a Christian God who actually cares about things like sin and gets himself born of a virgin. Why we exist, you're playing with the word why there. Science is working on the problem of the antecedent factors that lead to our existence. Now, why in any further sense than that, why in the sense of purpose, is, in my opinion, not a meaningful question. You cannot ask a question like, why do mountains exist, as though mountains have some kind of purpose. What you can say is, what are the causal factors that lead to the existence of mountains? And the same with life, and the same with the universe. Now, science over the centuries has gradually pieced together answers to those questions. Why in that sense? It's true that there are still some gaps, but surely, Cardinal, you're not going to fall for the God of the gaps trap, saying in those gaps which science has so far not yet answered.
Yes, exactly.
But you've suddenly leapt from sophisticated discussions of the origin of the universe, where one can have a proper discussion about whether some sort of cosmic intelligence could have set forth the laws of physics, and you suddenly jump to a man who lived 2,000 years ago, was born of a virgin, rose again from the dead.
Well, I only did that because you mentioned it first at the beginning.
I think that's petty. By comparison with the grandeur of the universe. I mean, to put my point again, do you really think that the creator of this magnificent edifice of the universe, the expanding universe, the galaxies, he really couldn't think of a better way to get rid of the sins on this one little speck of dust than to have himself tortured? He's the one who's doing the forgiving after all. Couldn't he just have forgiven? The why is not necessarily a question that deserves to be answered. There are all sorts of questions that people can ask, like, what is the colour of jealousy? That's a silly question.
Exactly.
Why is a silly question? Why is a silly question? You can ask, what are the factors that led to something coming into existence? That's a sensible question. But what is the purpose of the universe is a silly question. It has no meaning.
Good.
Dawkins attacked the core of Christianity. The core of Christianity is sin and atonement. Sin plus atonement. There is sin and there is atonement, and that is the work on the cross of Calvary. In the viewpoint of Dawkins, he said Christianity atonement story is horrible. He called it horrible. He said God couldn't forgive without torture or execution. God couldn't forgive without torture or execution. In his own viewpoint, he viewed it as morally assault. Now, he is reacting to a common misunderstanding. God is forgiving himself. This is forgiving himself by hurting someone else. Christianity teaches something different: justice and mercy. Mercy at the cross. God take evil seriously and he absorbed the cause of this evil himself. You don't have to agree, but you should critique the strongest versions. Many Christians understand the cross as both justice, that is sins, mercy, God paying for it. He pays the debt. I own the debt. He pays it for me. We are the ones that committed the atrocity of sin, and Christ comes and pays it for us. He pays the debt. Different Christianity tradition explains atonement in multiple models: substitutions, victory, victory over evil, victory over sin, victory over moral transformation, and so on. It is not one simplistic idea. It varies. Therefore, I have this particular question. Do you see the cross of Calvary? Do you see the story of Calvary? Do you see what happened at Calvary as a display of love or cruelty? Let me get that particular point at the comment section of what you think, what you thought. That is what happened. Let's continue.
Ask, what are the factors that led to something coming into existence? That's a sensible question. But what is the purpose of the universe is a silly question. It has no meaning. I don't think it's a very important question whether Jesus existed. There are some historians, most historians think he did.
They certainly do. I couldn't find an ancient historian that didn't.
Well, there are one or two, but I don't really care, actually, because precisely because it's petty. I mean, if you could possibly persuade me that there was some kind of creative force in the universe, there was some kind of physical, mathematical genius who created everything, the expanding universe, devised quantum theory, relativity, and all that. You could possibly persuade me of that. But that is radically and fundamentally incompatible with the sort of God who cares about sin, the sort of God who cares about what you do with your genitals, the sort of God who is interested, who has the slightest interest in your private thoughts and wickednesses and things like that. Surely you can see that a God who is grand enough to make the universe is not going to give a tuppenny cuss about what you're thinking about and your sins and things like that.
So you think that morality is not important?
Of course I don't think morality is not important. I'm a human being.
Sounds like you're saying it isn't important.
I'm a human being, and I live in a society of human beings, and within a society of human beings, morality is of course important. But we are one of billions of planets on a huge scale, and a cosmic God who bothers about this kind of human scale is not the kind of God that is compatible with a scientific view of the universe. It's a medieval view. In the God delusion, I made a 7-point scale. 1 is I'm totally confident there is a God. 7 is I'm totally confident there is not a God. 6 is, to all intents and purposes, I'm an atheist. I live my life as though there is no God. But any scientist of any sense will not say that they positively can disprove the existence of anything. I cannot disprove the existence of the Easter Bunny, and so I'm agnostic about the Easter Bunny. It's in the same respect that I'm agnostic about God. I think there's something wonderful about standing up and facing up to a universe where we are increasing our understanding, and we throw away childhood obsessions, we throw away the sort of imaginary friend that comforts us when we're children, and we feel the need for some kind of parent figure to turn to. I think when we grow up, we need to cast that aside and stand up tall in the universe, and it's cold and we're not going to last for it, we're going to die, and we face up to that. And I think that's a nobler way of getting through life than to pin your hopes on childhood illusions.
Is it okay to tell a child that God doesn't exist?
Richard Dawkins.
I think it's okay to tell a child the truth. But I would prefer to encourage a child to make up her own mind and to think about the evidence and to believe things when there is evidence. What I think is not okay, what I think is deeply immoral, is to tell a child that when she dies, if she's not good, she's going to go to hell. That seems to me to be mental child abuse and an utter disgrace.
If you don't mind, can we spend a few minutes talking about God, if that's okay? So I'm just wondering, I too get asked at many lectures my view on God. And my typical answer is that sure, there could be a God that's behind it all, and what we're doing as physicists, chemists, biologists, working out God's laws. And if that's how it is, I am thrilled to be part of that noble journey. I then add by saying, look, there's no evidence for that. I don't see any reason to believe that. And if what we're doing is just working out the laws of physics or chemistry or biology, and that's all that you need for a universe, I'm thrilled to be part of that journey. So the bottom line is, from a sociological, from a historical viewpoint, religion's very, very interesting, but it's kind of profoundly uninteresting to answer the deep questions, because I feel like all I'm doing is replacing one mysterious set of words framed scientifically with another set of equally mysterious words that are framed non-scientifically. Yeah. Now, I should say, after I say that, I always apologize, because I am all for hedging your bets. I'm not beyond that at all. What do you think of that?
Alright guys, before we continue, Dawkins also is trying to say what is the meaning of the universe. That is a silly question. I get this point about mountains not having purpose. Mountain has purpose. Humans aren't mountains. We have consciousness. Humans has moral responsibilities, love, grief, pains, guilt. If purpose is meaningless, as Dawkins put it, why does the human heart keep asking purpose questions, even when life is comfortable? Science answered mechanism. Meaning is a philosophical question. Humans consistently seek meaning across cultures, even when survivors need meat. God, who cares about sin and genital, is pity. What he is saying here, a grand cosmic creator wouldn't care about human morality or sexual behavior. Why? You cannot. You will. The God must surely care about it, because he is the one that have created it and have put in every part in its particular functions. For instance, the science that manufacture the car, they are to question, why are you not putting oil, or why are you not putting the gasoline into the vehicle, which is part of it. There must be question, because there is a owner. This assumes God's distant and uninterested. Christianity claims the opposite. God is personal, moral, and relational. If human matters, morality matters. If morality matters, how we treat our body and each other persons, each other side, and each other part of our body matters, because our body is part of symbol of our morality. Christianity teaches God is both transcendent, beyond, and immanent, that is near, immanent. The Bible frames morality as love of God and love of neighbor, not obeisance with trivial. That is a very simple at it. Let's still continue and get more points from the video, and do not forget hitting the like button, sharing and commenting your wonderful opinion.
Profoundly uninteresting to answer the deep questions, because I feel like all I'm doing is replacing one mysterious set of words framed scientifically with another set of equally mysterious words that are framed non-scientifically. Yeah. Now, I should say, after I say that, I always apologize, because I am all for hedging your bets. I'm not beyond that at all. What do you think of that view?
Well, I think that the sort of Newtonian, I mean, Newton thought that he was working out God's laws, and he was demonstrating the glory of God's mind when he worked out the laws of mechanics and so on. I'm not so at ease with that as you seem to be, because it does seem to me that if there is a supernatural, superhuman intelligence that worked it all out, in a way that undermines the entire scientific enterprise, because we are, maybe an evolutionary biologist feels this more strongly, the whole enterprise of evolutionary biology is to explain how you get prodigious complexity and design from virtually nothing. I mean, we hand over to physicists when we can go beyond the virtually nothing to the absolutely nothing. But if you start from quite an advanced level, bacteria, and work up to mammals and humans, we have a working theory which we know is true, which explains how you can go from great simplicity to prodigious complexity, and finally to the sort of complexity which is capable of designing things, of creating things, of working out how to do things. Well, if you are suddenly going to insert a designing machine, a creator, an intelligence at the root of the universe, you've just undermined your entire enterprise, because your entire enterprise has been to explain how you get to something complicated enough to do design. I think that religion teaches people to stop questioning. I'm sure you disagree with that, but the way I see it, it is such a privilege to be born at all. It's a very improbable event that either of us were born. We have the privilege of being in this universe for a few decades, and during that time it is an enormous privilege to be able to understand something about the universe in which we live, why we're here, why we were ever born, where we come from. And I think that is such a wonderful thing to be able to do, that I am hostile, I can get angry about competing accounts which seem to me to not encourage that kind of questioning, but instead to say, this is how it is, it's all written in the Holy Book, it was written 2,000 years ago, and that's the end of it. I think that deprives people. I think that is such a belittling, a demeaning view of the universe, and I think it's tragic that children are brought up with that when they could be brought up in a more open-minded way. So that's one reason for the anger. The other reason we've touched upon, it is that I do think that faith, unsupported by evidence, is a lethal weapon. Doesn't have to be, of course it doesn't have to be, but it can be. It's a weapon because possibly unscrupulous people can get hold of often young men and use them as weapons, use them as human bombs. And the only reason they can be deployed as human bombs is that they have been brought up from childhood onwards to believe implicitly, without question, that whatever the particular religion is, the details don't matter. The point is that they do believe that it is the will of God that they should detonate themselves and blow up a busload of people or blow up a skyscraper in New York. I don't think that any kind of reasoned argument would do that to people.
You are going to agree with me that it has been an interesting podcast, an interesting and an eye-opener. Truly, it's worth watching, and I wish to hear your own comments at the comment section. Duncan said teaching hell is child abuse, teaching about hell, teaching about God, teaching about creation to go to the little ones is an abuse. That is wrong. Because when we fail to do that, it means that we are not equipping the next generations. When we fail to do that, the next generations might choose to follow the footprint of the people like Richard Dawkins, who have been trying to come up with their own view about creations. Threatening children with hell is immoral. That is all about what Duncan is saying, which I cannot buy the idea. I will say this clearly: using fear to traumatize children is wrong, but not all Christian teaching is fear-based. Healthy faith teachings, love, conscience, responsibility, and grace are not terror and cannot be bad to the upcoming generations. Different Christian traditions emphasize grace and spiritual formation rather than fear. Healthy parenting avoid manipulations. It teaches truth with care and age-appropriate language. Religion stops questioning. Faith without evidence is dangerous. Terrorism point. What is he saying in this? According to Dawkins, religions discourage inquiry. Religion never discourage inquiry. Faith without evidence can be weaponized human bombs, according to Dawkins. What I can say on this carefully: extreme is real and blind indoctrinations is dangerous. But we have to be consistent. Violence can be justified by religion, ideology, nationalism, or anything. The issue aren't religion alone. No, it's fantasized plus dehumanizations plus unquestioned authorities. Christian faith at its best invites truth, humanity, and repentance, not blind violence. Extremism can attach itself to religion or secular ideology. Many religious communities promote charity, education, peace. Abuse happens when power is unchecked. Let's be fair. Here is the strongest point. Here is where I agree, and here is where I don't agree. This is hidden agenda behind what he just said. If you ever felt this question personally, you are not alone. Let's be fair. Where do this point hit you? Dawkins makes a real challenge. Faith-based religion, God of the gaps, and moral hypocrites. Those are worth confronting. But he also admits evolution doesn't give moral ought. He reduces purpose to silly. For me, the human hunger for meaning, moral obligations, and the existence of information-rich life sets still point beyond blind chance. Comment below. Do you think morality is objective or personal preference? Do you think morality is objective or personal preference? Do not forget hitting the subscribing buttons, share, like, and check us on our next post as I find out on this point.